After weeks of grueling negotiations and pressure from coalition partners, Religious Zionism Party Chair Bezalel Smotrich and Likud head Benjamin Netanyahu reporting a breakthrough in talks overnight. The two parties saying that they've come to terms on nearly all major issues between them and that the final details will likely be finalized over the next 24 to 48 hours. In the meantime, among the agreements, Smotrich's party saying they've agreed to Netanyahu's request to immediately appoint a temporary Knesset speaker in order to introduce and pass the controversial court override bill, and also to allow Shas Chair Aryeh Deri to serve as a minister. In any case, it seems that a new and stable right-wing coalition is indeed on the horizon to be sworn in the coming weeks. And so joining us now with more on the new coalition that is taking shape and more is now former member of Knesset for the Meretz party, Mossi Raz. Mossi, always a pleasure to have you here with us today. So let's talk about the current coalition talks. As we mentioned in the last 24 hours, there seems to have been some sort of breakthrough. What are your thoughts on the new government that's taking shape?
I'm not happy with this government. I did not vote for this government, and half of the Israelis who went to vote did not vote for this government. They got 50%, more or less. And it seems that this is the most extreme government in the history of Israel. I believe even Netanyahu himself is not happy about this government. The far right is, and the ultra-Orthodox are very powerful. Netanyahu is not far right, and he is not ultra-Orthodox. And many of the things that they demand, he is not supporting by himself. I'm sure that he wanted center parties to join him, and in the 15 years that he was prime minister, he always had with him center parties, sometimes even center-left parties, Labour. And this now he has to manage alone with all these extreme people. It's going to be very difficult even for him, so it's going to be difficult for me too. As part of what they demand is to confront most of the Jews in the world, when they don't want to recognize, for example.
I want to get to the specifics in a minute, but I mean, you mentioned this is the most, I think, far-right government in Israel's history, and yet the people did vote for it. You mentioned, 50%, a little bit more than 50%, I would say, especially, for example, with Bezalel Smotrich, Itamar Ben-Gvir receiving, becoming the third largest party in the Knesset before they split. Do you see this sort of as a failure of the left, and specifically with Meretz that didn't pass the electoral threshold? Is the Israeli public moving to the right?
I think that, specifically with Meretz, that we did not make it through the threshold, 3.25%. It happened to us in the past, but the threshold was not that high in the past. And specific for the left, we got 49.5 or 0.6%. It's exactly like we got in 1992 and most of the years in the last 3 decades. But because of technical issues, the thresholds and other things, we didn't have the majority. Yes, the left has problems here, everywhere. Social democracy is not that popular anymore. If we talk about the families in Israel, if you vote for the right wing, probably you have a larger family, and then the young generation is way more supportive to the right wing. But in spite of all that, we are still 50%.
Now, let's talk about, this current coalition that seems to be taking shape. It hasn't formed yet, and yet it has received, a lot of criticism from both outside and within Israel over its intended policies. We can start, for example, with, Defense Minister Benny Gantz, who recently said that Ben-Gvir's appointment as National Security Minister will harm Israel's security. What are your thoughts on that?
It's not a revolution here, yes, because it was in a democratic way, but this is a revolutionary change in Israel. If you take somebody who was a terrorist, he was charged in court a few times as supporting terror organization, that the Israeli army didn't want to recruit because of his past. And now he's going to be a minister in charge of security, of national security. This is a real change in Israel. that we could not expect even 1 year ago. So it's not only the fact that it's right-wing and far-right. It's a real change that, and of course, a person like Gantz and like myself even, but who is the defense minister, was the chief of staff, who did not even thought that there is a reason to take a person like Ben-Gvir to the army. And now we see him actually not replaced him, but going into the cabinet, and Gantz is going to be out of the cabinet.
But it seems that, the Israeli public has overwhelmingly said that they need more of a firm hand against terrorism. We're seeing constant terrorist attacks. We saw just one today.
Yes,
perhaps this is the way that Israel needs to go.
Yeah, I think, no, it's not the way Israel needs to go, but yes, this is the results of the elections. It's not that the left is so weak, it's that the far right is so powerful. They got 11% compared to, I think, 5% a year ago and a year and a half ago. And yes, Israelis want to see, and it's natural. I think in all the history of the world, nations always supported wars.
And I want to talk also about the very controversial override bill, as it's being called, which critics are saying will erode democracy by limiting the powers of the courts. I just want to hear your thoughts on this bill. Clearly, you're against it, but what are your thoughts on this?
Of course, I'm against it. I think that it comes from a narrow thinking about democracy as a system that it's only about majority and minority, not about human rights, not about constitutional values, not about anything else.
All right. Well, Mossi Raz, former member of Knesset for the Meretz party, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us and provide your thoughts on the new coalition.